Hi, I'm Jim Lowe, and if you're new, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Work Tuff Gear Nomad field knife. I was editing my wood burning video and I said to myself, you know what, it's really a shame if I don't do a real review, a full review of this knife and add it to the quest for backpacking knives, because I do think this would be a good backpacking option for folks. As those that follow the channel know, my go-to backpacking knife is the Dark Timber Honey Badger. Unfortunately, this knife can be hard to find, and it can be really hard to find at a reasonable price. They retail for around $325, but on the secondary market, they can go as high as $600. So for a lot of people, that is unobtainable. The Nomad field knife, however, retails for $220. It is currently available on the Work Tuff website, and they don't command a premium on the secondary market, at least not yet. So let's take a closer look at this knife. This knife has a lot going for it, and it's a knife that I've really come to appreciate. I think it is probably underrated in that I think people look at the shape and you know, it's a non-standard looking knife, and I think that may turn a few people off, but you know, people really should give it its due. This knife was designed by Zeke Manacho. He's also the one that designed the Nomad camp knife, which I have a previous review on. The Nomad field knife has a 7.5 inch blade with a 6.5 inch cutting edge. It is 0.21 on the spine. It's made from Bohler 340 steel. One of the things about Work Tuff Gear is being in Taiwan, they use a lot of steels that, you know, we may not be familiar with in the US. And so, you know, most of the Work Tuff knives are being made right now out of SK85, which is a sort of a Japanese version of 1095. It's a little bit tougher than 1095 or 1084. I asked Zeke, I sent him a note, asked him specifically, okay, well, why did you choose the Bohler 340 over the SK85? And what he told me was that this steel just seemed to be a better steel for the job. It was just a better fit for this knife. Now in comparison, the Bohler 340 is more wear resistant, so it's going to keep an edge a little bit longer, and it's also a little more corrosion resistant. So if you're out with it in the field, you know, for several days or a week, it is less likely to oxidize, corrode than say the Nomad camp knife. Now, in my previous video, I put this knife through its paces in order to build a fire. I'm not going to go through all of that. I will splice in the fire starting bits of the video. There we go. The batoning bits of the video. The one thing that I didn't do in those videos is to chop with it, and so I will do that with this. But I think, you know, right from what I've seen so far, it is a great knife. As you can see, this knife has a very wide belly, and if I compare it to something like the Honey Badger, it is just a tad longer. You can see that it is much wider. Weight-wise, the Honey Badger comes in at 11 3/4 ounces, and the Nomad field knife comes in at 1 pound 4 ounces. If we do a comparison to the Dark Timber OG Grizzly, you can see that it's about 3/4 of an inch shorter than the OG Grizzly, and it is actually wider than the OG Grizzly. The Work Tuff site says that this is a saber grind, and it is a very, very high saber grind. I mean, it's almost a flat grind, but you can see it is, you know, that's a high grind. The tip is very interesting in that it tapers with 2 distinct drops. There's a bevel here, it drops from here to here, and then it drops again. It's a very stout tip, which if you're digging for fat wood, either in downed trees or in old stumps, that's something that I really appreciate. Let's talk about some of the things that Work Tuff throws in when you buy a knife. So this lanyard came with a knife. For their handle. So the handle on this knife is removable. A lot of times, you know, you'll lose one of these screws, and then you're running around trying to find a new one, or trying to, you know, get a hold of the manufacturer to have them send you a new one. You know, it may be the day before you're going on a trip where you realize that you know, you no longer have a screw and you need one. Well, they provided extras. Now that said, whenever I get a knife that has removable scales, the first thing I do is I unscrew these, put some Loctite on, so I don't have to worry about them coming out. Invariably, when they come out, you know, you're going to be in the middle of the trail somewhere, a week into the backcountry, and that's no good. You'll notice that the handle has a rather unique construction here. It's got this little finger groove in here, and that's to help aid in chopping. So not only will it lock your hand in when you're here chopping, but a lot of people will go back and grab the end of the knife with their 2 fingers, and so it'll also lock your hand in that way. This particular knife comes with a Kydex sheath. Fit is excellent. It's not coming out. I mentioned in my previous video that because I'm using the forward lanyard hole, it does require a little more effort to actually seat the knife into the scabbard. But over time, that'll probably loosen up as the lanyard kind of becomes softer. The one thing and the downside of this knife, or this entire package, in my mind, are these MOLLE clips. A knife this size, I am not going to clip to my pack. Now that may just be me, but you know, this knife to me is small enough that you can carry it on your waist, and you know, you can see that I've set this up the highest setting that it can possibly go, so that I can put it in here on my waist. You know, and that'll sit fine. But the one thing that I don't like is the clips are inconvenient to me, especially when it comes to taking this off. I mean, this will work, but it's not my preference. Fortunately, the holes along this right-hand side are standard size holes. So something like the belt attachment that they provided with the Nomad camp knife, you know, I can swap out this belt attachment, put it on this sheath, and if I wanted to, I could probably use the MOLLE attachment on this sheath. I think the MOLLE attachment has enough holes, and there are enough holes in here that I could do that if I wanted to. You know, a knife this size, this is more of the knife that I would carry on my pack. This to me is just too small to carry on a pack, or too small for me. Now the reason I thought I'd add this to the backpacking knives is because it is, you know, it is a very, from what I saw last week, it seems like a very capable knife. If I do a comparison between some of my other backpacking knives, and again, we've got the Dark Timber Honey Badger here, got the Dark Timber OG Grizzly, which are 2 of my go-tos. The Honey Badger comes in at 11 3/4 ounces. The Nomad field knife comes in at 1 pound, 4 ounces, and the OG Grizzly comes in at 1 pound, 3 ounces. Let's get to some chopping. Now again, you know, a knife like this, its primary use is not going to be for chopping. It is not a chopper. So I've got a small piece of dried maple here. I'm going to start in what would be your normal position first. And you know what? I think maybe I'll go in from the end. I've only got a little bit of wood to work with here. I burned most of the wood in the previous video, so I don't really have great wood to practice on. Okay, it's doing a fair job. Let me move back into the 2-finger position and see how that does. As you can see, it's a little bit easier for me to angle this up to get the angles that I want. I'm also a little concerned with a piece this short. You know, if I come in at too shallow of an angle and it skitters across, I just want to make sure that there's less likelihood of it skittering across and hitting my thumb or hitting my forearm. Angling the wood, I don't have to worry too much about misstrikes. And right now, that is my biggest concern. Getting that extra leverage with my 2 fingers in the back does help. Really isn't my preferred method. Okay, there you go. This is really the edge test. So this is Chinese pistache. This is the hardest wood that I have. This should be a good test of the edge. You can see what I mean by skittering off. We got those glancing blows that are kind of going down. Okay, so I'm getting a better feel for this, getting a little more confidence. Can throw a heavier hit into it. Yeah, no issues on the edge. Let's take a bigger piece. This again is another piece of maple. That's exactly what I mean. And you can see that's why I've got my hand low, So when that happens, I'm not coming into my hand. So for me, 3 fingers is sort of the compromise between leverage and control. Back here with 2 fingers, you know, it kind of, you got this kind of moves around willy-nilly. And again, for folks that are new to the channel, I've got a torn tendon in my thumb, and so stuff like this just sort of wrecks me. So, you know, I don't have a super strong grip because of it, because the tendon is completely torn, and it's really the muscle that's the muscle's keeping my thumb in place. So with 3 fingers, I'm getting some leverage, and I'm getting better control. As you can see, the edge still looks pretty good. Let's try some cross batoning. When your knife gets stuck like that, you want to pull it straight up and forward, or straight down and back. What you don't want to do is wiggle the knife around, especially a knife that is as thin as this on the edge. If you start doing this, you put lateral stresses on the knife, and that's just no good. Lastly but not least, let's do some cross batoning on some Chinese pistache. And you can see Chinese pistache is so hard that when it comes out, it basically chips out. I heard somebody say that when they watch people chop and cut wood, the biggest mistake that everybody makes is they make their wedge too narrow. I've obviously done that here. There we go, that's a little bit wider. And it looks like it's just going to be barely wide enough, but it should do the job. Yep, it's at a place where I could probably just snap it in half. But let's not do that. Let's use the knife. There we go. That's cross batoning and chopping with the Nomad field knife. There's no significant edge damage. Got your typical wood staining. No damage to the spine. When I look at this knife, it really says camp knife to me. This is the knife that I would want to have around camp, you know, to do light wood tasks, you know, to start fires with, to do food prep. If you want to backpack with this knife, I think this would make a fine backpacking knife, especially if you're the kind of person that likes to bring real food backpacking. I mean, if you're that guy or gal that, you know, goes out in the back country with a big old steak and a bunch of vegetables and a cast iron pot or whatever, this is the knife for you. I mean, this is a great knife for that sort of trip. Of all my recent purchases, I've put this through a lot, and I don't have footage of all the abuse that it's been through, but it has been through a lot, and the edge is still really sharp. and it's still got that mirror finish on it from the factory. So I think that's pretty cool. So there you go, the Nomad field knife. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.